Okay, so for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to save data that's stored in Python into a text file. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to assume that you've already finished running the model and that you already have, say, 2, 3, or even more lists of data that you're wanting to save into the text file. And so that's represented by this fitness list, trait 1 list, and trait 2 list, right? So these lists have several values, I believe 25 values each that are saved from the model. And now, since we're going to be running this model multiple times, we need to save this data into a text file so we can work with it later after we've finished running all these model replicates. So, of course, the first thing we want to do is open up an actual file handler so we can write to it. So let's just use a simple file name like output_data.csv. Then, of course, if we're going to be opening up a file for writing, we have to specify with the W that's the output file. And then we want to say as out_file. Okay, so running that alone will actually just open up the file right there, and it'll just open up a blank file for you to start writing to. So the next thing we want to do is make a for loop that counts through all the indexes of these lists, because we want to go through, we want to create a file that lists the data line by line, where each row contains the corresponding values for each entry. So the easiest way to do that is we start with the for loop. Then we can say for I in range, and then we want to get the length of one of the lists. And so I'll show you what this is doing in a second by showing you, if we just have it print I, you see that basically what this is doing is it's creating a list that counts from 0 all the way up to 25, right? Because we have 25 items in the list. So if we do a length of the list, that gives 25. And then so if we do a range, that gives this count from 0 to 24. So we're going to use this counter to index into these lists so we can list all of the proper items on the same rows together. And so we can do this by building a string for each row and then outputting that into the file. So we can call this string outString and assign it to an empty string. And then let's say we just wanted to put the fitness into each row right now. We can do out_string plus equals. And we want to, of course, turn the value into a string. We say fitness_list, and then we use that index that's counting. And so if we just print out what we're doing right now, we can see what each row is doing. And you can see each line is a row here, and it just has a 1, 3, 5, 7, and all these values that are stored in fitness list. If we wanted to do something similar, and let's say have a comma delimited file that has all three of the values, we could say out_string plus equals. We want to add a comma so it's in between, and then we get the trait 1 list of I. And we of course want to turn that into a string, and then similarly we want to do that for trait 2, so we do comma trait 2 list of I, and we turn that into a string. So now you see what we've done here is as we count along, we put all three of the values together and put a comma in between, so that delimits what each value is. So now instead of printing this value out to a terminal, we of course want to put it into out file. So we can do this by calling out_file.write, and then we just pass it the string. And so if we run that right now, it won't output anything, but we can run a cat on the output file, which again was called output_data.csv, and we see that there's a little bit of a problem here, right? all the values are still on the same row, and that's because we didn't put a new line in there. And so we can do this, we can fix this very quickly by just adding that new line. So we do out underscore string plus equals \n. And so what this \n is called is a new line, and that tells the computer that you want the text following that \n to go on a new line. So if we run that and we do a cat again, now we see that the data is stored properly in this file. So one final thing I wanted to make a comment about was that you'll be generating multiples of these files, because for each of the experiments you'll be running 30 experiments. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to provide each of these experiments a different output file name. So the easiest way to do this is, as you're running the experiments, keep some counter. You can call it maybe replicate or something like that, and have it count as you complete each experiment. And let's say this is experiment 5 that we just finished. And then you can very simply change the name dependent on the replicate that you're on by just putting it right here as you open up the file. So we just turn the replicate variable into a string, and then now if we do an ls in this directory for output files, let's do an underscore and then a star, you'll see that we now have an output 5. So I highly recommend doing this while you're going through and doing your replicates, so you don't end up overriding your data and losing a lot of time because you weren't careful about naming your files.
Peace out! Data done!
Okay, so that's it for this tutorial.